Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us in our college exploration webinar. We're excited to present and help you learn more about post-high school options like career programs, the transfer pathway, and direct four-year pathway. I will go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Ana Diaz Galvan.
My name is James DeHady. I am a fellow at Balboa High School in San Francisco. So 10,000 Degrees, our mission is to achieve educational equity and to support students from low-income backgrounds to and through college to help them impact their communities and the world. Okay, and then here's a little bit of an agenda about what we're going to be talking today. We're going to be debunking some myths. Then we're going to be talking pathways, kind of pathways in terms of different options you have post-high school. And then we'll have college systems. And then after that, we'll talk about college lists.
All right, so first we'll begin by debunking some common college myths. Maybe you've heard some of these myths before. So first myth, I have a low GPA, I can't go to college. Private colleges are more expensive to attend, and I need to decide on my career before choosing a college. First myth of having a low GPA, so not being able to go to college. Actually, community colleges don't require a GPA or test score, so anyone can apply. And it is also a great fresh start for students if they want to start all over or transfer over to a school of their choice. They actually will be reporting their GPA from their community college, so they won't be using their high school GPA. And for private schools, many private schools offer amazing financial aid. Private schools do tend to have a larger donation fund, so they may be able to be more flexible with how much financial aid they could award a student. And it's okay to not know exactly what you want to do after college. College is about exploring your options. I personally changed my major in college, but I know people who have changed it from between 3 to 5 times. So it's okay to not be 100% sure yet what you want to do. And then now we'll be going into post-high school pathways and college systems. So what are the post-high school pathways and college systems that students can navigate? So first, we want to make sure we distinguish the difference between a major and a career. So when you are applying to colleges, you will be asked to select a major. And a major is an area of study or focus during college, whereas a career is the type of work that one chooses to focus on. For example, my major is chemistry, but potential careers include cosmetology chemist, oceanography, forensic chemist, and a lot of other different things are listed. And if my major is civil engineering, some potential careers include urban planner, fire engineer, construction manager, consulting manager, and many more. So definitely do your research when you are looking at different careers that might interest you, because there are going to be many different fields that you can go into with just that one major.
So in terms of post-high school pathways, as you guys can see on the screen, we have listed community college, and then we have FourYear University College. And so we're going to start off by talking about community college. So at the community college, you could either start and maybe get a certificate. The units for a certificate vary, or you could get yourself an associate. And associate's degree at the community college is going to be 60 units. As you can see on the other side of the screen, there's the bachelor's at 120. Okay, and then the community college as a transfer path. Why is it a good option? So one of the reasons is because it's sometimes free depending on where you reside or attend. For example, for people who go to school in San Francisco, coming out of high school and going to CCSF, there is a program called Free City. And Free City is basically a program that gives students free tuition who are basically residents in San Francisco to be able to get access to it. And also on top of that as well, you have to, or not you have to, but also on top of that as well, why is it a good option? You complete your GE courses for less money, as compared to, you can pay around maybe let's say $46 a unit at a community college compared to maybe a couple $100 that you pay per unit at a university. You also explore majors and careers before transferring. So it gives you a chance to kind of, dip your foot in the water, try out everything, see what interests you. And also it is a fresh start. And that's basically meaning that your high school academic record basically won't be used against you when you transfer. It's a fresh start, clean slate, whatever happened in high school, that's basically, that's of the past. It's kind of time to start a fresh new page. And then also community college course credits can be transferred to a 4-year. So as we said on the last slide, for getting that 120 in units, basically what you'll need is you start off at that community college and then you transfer to the 4-year. You start off and you get units from there, and that transfers to your bachelor's. And then moving on, what does the path look like? As we said, you're going to need 60 to be eligible to transfer. And then also on top of that as well, you'll typically complete some general education courses plus prereqs for your desired major. And then as well, you will have transfer requirements that will kind of vary by the 4-year. It can be different via UCs, different via CSUs, and then private colleges and things like that. Okay, and then one of the things about career technical education that you get at a community college, basically, community colleges, they offer all these kinds of exciting and rewarding career paths. And these are basically kind of like more vocational things that you can study at community college. These are different kind of things like, construction, life sciences, manufacturing, business, retail, hospitality, and tourism. These are kind of things that you can go and get a certificate for. It can kind of help you to get out into the workforce a little sooner, start to make some money. We have now a certificate. Where can you get a certificate? You can get that at a community college. And what you need to know is that the requirements for each of the programs are going to vary. Not one is necessarily going to be like the other, but you also want to keep in mind that there are different certificate programs at different schools. So what there is at, let's say, College of Marin might not be there at Santa Rosa JC, and then so on and so forth. And then this is just a few examples of the kind of certificate programs that you can find. You got things like culinary arts, you got automotive technology, you got EMT, dental assisting.
So now we'll be discussing a community college. So where you can apply to community college is you can create an account at cccapply.org. And like mentioned earlier, there's no GPA requirement, no standardized testing requirement. So anybody can submit an application at the community college, and it is free to submit an application at a community college. And when to apply, some applications open the fall prior, some the spring prior. So it just depends on what semester you want to be enrolled and taking classes at that community college. But it is recommended that students finish applying no later than early spring. And then now moving into a 4-year pathway, if you plan to just go directly to a 4-year, we'll be talking a little bit about what the eligibility looks like and what you want to make sure to fulfill. So one of the requirements for applying to a 4-year college is to make sure that you have completed or are completing your A through G requirements. A through G requirements are a set of classes and grades that need to be fulfilled in order to apply to a UC or CSU or 4-year private school. So we can see in the chart that for high school students, 2 years of history are required. For English, they have to be taking English all 4 years. For mathematics, 3 years are required, but you see that it also has 4 years recommended. And that is specifically more for UCs. If students want to be more eligible for UC admissions or look a little bit more like a competitive applicant, they recommend maybe an additional year in a specific course. It's not required, but it's just something that is recommended for the UC. And then laboratory science, 2 years are required, but 3 years are recommended. And then for a foreign language, 2 years are required. And then visual and performing arts would be 1 year required. This requirement can look different for different high schools. Some high schools may offer certain classes that maybe others don't. Maybe some offer like drama or music or dance. So that may count as a fulfilling the F requirement for visual and performing arts. And then last is a college prep elective. And this is also going to vary depending on the school. Some schools may offer AVID, and AVID would count as a college prep elective. Maybe some offer like psychology. So that could also count. So just doing your research. One thing we recommend is to definitely meet with your counselor if you are thinking about applying to any UCs or CSUs, so that way you can make sure the student can make sure that they are on track when they are taking their registering and enrolling in their high school classes. So they are meeting all the A through G requirements.
Okay, and so let's talk a little bit about the CSUs, California State Universities. So where do you apply? You're going to be able to apply on calstate.edu/apply. And some of the admission requirements, as Anna just kind of discussed, going over the A through G, CSUs are going to require the A through G requirements. And it's going to be test optional in terms of the standardized test, meaning that they're not looking at the they're not looking at the SAT or ACT. And they are asking, or basically requiring, a 2.5 A through G GPA minimum. However, depending on each campus, they could accept between the 2.0 to 2.49. However, that's going to be depending on the individual campus. They're going to make their decision as to whether they will accept a student based on other supplemental factors. And the time frame to apply is going to be between October 1st to November 30th. So October 1st is coming, right around the corner. Okay, and then we have the University of California schools, and then that's the link for the University of California schools. The admission requirements for the University of California schools, A through G requirements as well, test optional as well for those standardized tests. But what's interesting for this is that it is going to be a 3.0 A through G GPA minimum. And then the UCs have the personal insight questions. Maybe some of you guys have heard of it. It's the kind of short answer responses that are given. There are 8, you choose 4, and that's kind of their form of getting an idea of who you are as a student, besides just GPA, extracurriculars, and things of that sort. Deadline or time frame for the UC schools, it's going to be basically August 1st to November 30th. And then we have the private and out-of-state schools. So as we see as some examples of the private and out-of-state schools, we got St. Mary's, that's in Moraga. We got USC down in SoCal, University of San Francisco, Stanford. You got Dominican. For some of us in Marin, that's like literally right around the corner from us. So there's definitely a lot of private and out-of-state schools that are out there. Where can you apply? You can either apply directly through the school or through the Common App. For those of you who don't know what the Common App is, the Common App is basically that kind of central database for applying to private schools. However, there are some schools who choose to have, just to submit the application directly to them without having the use of the Common App, or some schools they'll use both. Usually you'll see that if you want to apply to a private school, you apply through the Common App. Basically, the course requirements are going to vary by school. There's not exactly like an A through G kind of thing. But it is somewhat along the same lines. Like, each school is going to ask for something along the lines of like, English, history, math. Won't be exactly the same thing, but it's similar. And then they're going to ask for essays. They're going to ask for an essay. And then depending on each individual school, they could ask for some supplemental essays. You're going to need some letters of rec or letter of rec. And the standardized testing requirements vary. However, you're going to want to go ahead and look at that specific school to see what they're requiring, if they're still requiring it. And then when to apply, the deadlines are really going to vary. There's a lot of these schools that are going to have deadlines coming up around November, December as well. Some of them are going to be later in the school year. So it's going to be up to you as a student to go ahead and take a look at when the deadlines are going to be.
So now we'll be sharing some tips on creating your college list. If you haven't yet had the chance to create your college list or really thought about what to look for in colleges, these are just going to be a few things that we think are important to consider. So some of these are key factors of interest, and some of these might be more important than others depending on the individual. But in general, some things we want students to consider are thinking about location, campus resources, class size, extracurriculars / clubs, cost of living because students may be living off campus, the demographics and majors, programs, and the acceptance rate of that school. So for majors, programs, and acceptance rate, thinking about, does the school have a few majors that students are interested in case maybe they might not be able to get accepted with the first major of choice. It's good to have at least 2 or 3 majors to consider as a backup because some schools may have programs that are more impacted than others. Is the program you're interested in impacted like mentioned? And And what is the acceptance rate? And cost of living off campus, is the area expensive? What does the housing look like surrounding the school? Do they offer apartments, leased apartments? Is it going to be farther from the school, close to the school campus? These are just going to be things to consider if students are going to be moving off campus. And then campus resources. Does the school provide any cool resources that are important to the student? Is the school an HBCU or an HSI? Are there any services that can be successful? Different schools will offer different kind of resources. Some may have specifically an undocumented student center to help students that identify as undocumented or AB 540 to offer different kinds of resources and support that they would need. Some schools may have also maybe a counseling services department, tutoring services, just any kind of departments or centers that can provide very beneficial programs or events or information for students. And then extracurriculars and clubs. Are there any clubs that the student can see themselves joining? Are they interested in sports? Are they interested in Greek life? Or are there any cool campus events to help the student feel more grounded and connected to the school? And demographics, what does the gender ratio look like? What does the ethnicity demographics look like? Can the students see themselves having a positive experience with their future peers? And some of these may be more important than others, but it just depends on the student, what they think is going to be most important for them. Location, thinking about what does the weather look like in that area? Is it going to be rainy? Is it going to be sunny? Does the student have the correct wardrobe for that kind of weather? Is it going to be close or far from home? If they feel like they need to be closer to home, maybe they would consider more local colleges. And if they're going to be far from home, thinking about how often are they going to be going home? Are they planning to go home during the holidays, during the breaks, every other weekend? And just kind of planning ahead to also consider expenses if they're going to be far enough away from home that they're going to need to buy a plane ticket maybe to be able to come home for holidays or vacations. And also the surrounding communities. What does the community look like there? What are some things to do nearby? Is there a beach there? Is there snow? Are there hiking trails if the student really enjoys hiking? And for class structure, thinking about if the student feels that they would prefer larger class sizes or small class sizes. Some schools have maybe over 300 students for one classroom. And then some may have them as small as maybe 10 students. So they have a little bit more one-on-one support, or they can get to know the professor a little bit easier than if they were to be in a class lecture hall of more than 200 students. And how does the student learn best? So just thinking about their kind of study habits, if they feel they can focus well, what kind of support they need in order to be able to pass that class. And also semester versus quarter system. Some schools have a semester system, which is very similar to the high school system, where they just have their fall grades and then their spring grades. And then some have quarter system, which will be a little bit more fast paced for students. And they will be, taking more classes within that quarter system, having more professors. So just thinking about what kind of system they feel like they will be able to keep up with. And something that we do encourage students to have when they are building their college list is to have at least 9 schools on there before they start their senior year. And we would recommend to have at least 3 in each category to be able to help the student have a pretty diverse list, but also know that if something doesn't work out, they have another one that they can fall back to. So safety would be their qualifications exceed the university requirements, so the student is likely to be admitted. One example of a safety school would be a community college, because community colleges don't have any GPA requirements or any SAT or ACT requirements. Anybody can be able to apply and attend a community college, so that would be considered a safety school for the majority. And then a target school would be their qualifications match the school's requirements. Maybe they're meeting that 3.0 GPA for the UC. or they have maybe a 3.0 GPA and they're applying to a CSU, which requires students to have a 2.5 GPA. So then in that case, they may have a pretty good chance of getting admitted because their GPA is higher than what the school might require. And a reach school would be that the schools are more competitive and have lower admission rates, which is why it might be important for them to look at what the acceptance rate looks like, and also consider, depending on their major, if that major is going to be impacted at that school, meaning that a lot of students may be attending that school with that specific major, and they have more students applying to that school with that specific major than they may have classroom space for. So that's just how we would recommend for students to break down their college list so they know exactly, have a better understanding of where their eligibility falls within each school that they are applying to.
We have impactation. Keep in mind impactation. What does that mean? It basically means that there are more eligible applicants than there are available admissions. So this results in a more competitive program and admission process. So what does that kind of mean in a sense? Like, examples, that's, for example, like, let's say nursing, for example. Nursing, basically anywhere I know, is pretty impacted as a major, whether you go to, like, Sonoma State, San Francisco State, community colleges as well, nursing is pretty impacted. That's something that is always pretty heavily impacted. So, it's very competitive to get in, and, the standards for, kind of maintaining yourself, staying within these kinds of programs are high as well. So why does it matter? It kind of may change where on the safety target reach list you put that school. So as we put, for an example, if you apply to UC Davis for sociology, you'd put it as a target school. But if you're applying for vet sciences, it would be a reach. So it's like you start off as a target, but once you start getting into things related to your actual major, then that's where it would kind of become a reach, just because vet sciences would be considered impacted. So it's just kind of some things to keep in mind about impactation.
So just a few tips to help get started or consider to building your college list. Like mentioned, having at least 9 schools, the more that you apply to, the better chances you may have of getting into these schools. And it never hurts to have as many options as possible. Also include a community college, even if that may not be your first choice, definitely include community college because it can fall under the safety category. And also, like, things change and we never know what can happen in life. So it's good to have at least a community college there as an option in case you have to stay closer to home for whatever reason, or maybe your financial aid situation didn't work out as you thought it would. Just anything that could possibly happen that can change somebody's decision. It's just a good idea to have a community college. And then, like mentioned, just have 2 to 3 majors in mind, just in case maybe you get accepted into the school, but not with the original major that you had chosen first. So just look at other majors, consider what other programs you may be interested in, just in case you have to go with your alternative major. And just do as much research as you can for the schools that you're interested in, looking at all the factors that we mentioned of interest. And remember to just keep an open mind throughout the whole college process. Maybe your dream school is not actually going to be your best fit school, and it's not going to have be the school that has the best kind of resources for you. And just look at the in-depth major program research, maybe looking at specific jobs that can relate to your major or program, classes that you might have to take. You want to make sure that you're interested in the classes you have to take within that major. And also just categorize all the schools as safety, target, and reach, so you kind of have a better understanding of what to expect, and just know that you have at least 1 school, at least 3 schools in every category, so you have as many options open to you as possible. So question is, I'm interested in a CTE program or starting at a community college. Should I create a college list? And the answer is yes, you should create a college list. Maybe if you're starting off at the community college, you may want to transfer out at some point to another college. So you want to make sure that you know exactly what colleges you have in mind and what those requirements are going to be, or what classes you need to take in order to be able to receive credit. and have enough credit to transfer to that college. Also, if there are multiple community colleges at your area, you may want to create a college list just to be able to compare the different programs the community college might offer or different resources that they have available. And also you can get an idea of where you want to start transferring depending on what their transfer requirements look like. And if you know what career or CT program you want to pursue, you want to do your research so you have all the options and local schools to look at to pick which program is the one that you're most interested in, and then just compare the different kinds of programs that they may have. All right, so now we have our questions section. Also for community college units, depending on what community college you are going to be attending, it may look different. I know for the Santa Rosa Junior College, they do have something called the California Promise Grant. So students who enroll at the Santa Rosa Junior College will have their tuition covered by the California Promise Grant as long as the student lists the community college on their financial aid application and they fill out a community college application at the Santa Rosa Junior College. And I see a question of, are there recommended websites to do research on colleges that compare a bunch of factors? So this is a great question. Yes, there is. The one I'm most familiar with is College Greenlight. The student would create an account for free and they would just enter in maybe like all the things that is important for them for a college to have. And that actually will take that information the student enters in, and they will use that information to compare on a percentage scale, the percentage of how this specific school that the student is looking at has like all of the needs that the student put as their criteria.
There was a question that about undocumented immigrants who don't have some proof of tax returns. You can still be able to do, for talking in reference to like financial aid, you can still fill out an application. The only thing is that you would just have to find some way to get an account of what money was made for, in reference to the time period would be last year, 2020 for taxes. You would have to be able to find a way to, I guess, estimate how much money was made by that person last year. So maybe there's like old checks, old receipts, that kind of thing. If how important are extracurriculars for getting into the UCs? So I'm just going to answer this one live. So I would say in terms of how important they are into getting to UCs, I would say that it's going to depend on the application and the student, not really like a one size fits all kind of thing. All these things with UC application, talking about your A through G GPA, your personal insight questions, extracurriculars, all these kinds of things kind of all, kind of come into one pot and can kind of present the student. Yes, they can definitely help. For example, if a student's grades maybe aren't the best, but they have a lot of great extracurricular activities, that can really be a pretty big plus. Overall, yes, if you got some really good stuff on there, maybe different clubs, volunteering, that kind of thing, that's a really great factor. So I would say basically encourage it, whatever you have that. How is financial aid considered for a child whose parents divorced and childless with one parent?
Sure, I can be more general with this because like everybody's financial situation looks different, but usually for those that are, if the student has parents that are divorced, depending on how recently maybe the divorce happened, the school may provide an option for the student to maybe only report the income of the parent that the student is like maybe spending 51% of their time with. So the parent that maybe the student is with more most of the time will be reporting the income. And sometimes they may offer a different kind of solution. If the parents have already done their taxes together, maybe they would just take away the income of the parent that maybe the student is not with 51% of the time. So this is just something to just reach out definitely with the school that the student is applying to. And then another question just relating to California Dream Act application, if it asks for parent ITIN number, you can put your parent ITIN number, but we would just recommend if your parent does not have a social security number to just put zeros on the application, and that will just let the college know that the parent just doesn't have a social security number.
Excuse me. Question was, if you're accepted into a scholarship or something, where or how would you use it? Does it give you the money automatically? This is going to kind of depend a little bit. If you are talking about our scholarship, we give the check to the student, and then the student from there decides what they're going to do with it. Books, transportation, paid towards some, extra cost for tuition, whatever it may be, the student decides. So that check goes directly to the student. If it's going to be some other scholarships, that's really going to depend. You're going to have to look to do some research on what the scholarship is and how they disperse it. Some of them, they might just send you the check directly. Some of them, they'll get the information of your school so that they can send it directly to the financial aid office at your school. So that's going to depend. Guess with that being said, I don't know, Anna, did you have anything else you want to add, or?
But thank you everyone for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your night.